All right, so we're back into the little indoor garden here. I just gave it a good watering, so it's looking pretty darn good. You'll probably notice a lot of strange things in here. There's tea bags and popcorn seeds and eggshells, and sweet potato peels and coffee filters, coffee grounds in them. Lots of different things, lots of scraps and things. So what this is, if you haven't been following along, is it's an indoor worm farm, but instead of harvesting worm castings by feeding your scraps and things like that to a worm farm and then going ahead and taking the castings out and putting them in a garden, we're growing right in the worm farm. And so there's lots and lots of worms in here. If we dig through, and we will in just a little bit, we'll find a few. But what I've done is I planted a bunch of things in here. So I'm trying out all kinds of different stuff. I have a bunch of radishes over here, which I planted a few weeks ago. I've got a row of carrots here and some onions. And I've got some other things just kind of sprinkled through here. I just took the extra seeds and threw them around. I've got some little bush beans, a bunch of those growing through here. And I've got a couple potatoes, which are gonna probably overgrow and get a little bit too big in here, but we're gonna try it out anyway. And we have the kale here. The kale's been in here for months, but I've harvested a little bit off of this, and it's just a nice, healthy kale plant. What I've been doing is just bringing down our coffee grounds for the day and throwing that stuff right in here on top. I've buried some things in here. Sometimes I'll come through and just kind of scoop a little dirt out of the way and throw things under. Some of the things like the potato peels and that I've just kind of thrown in here. We'll let those just kind of mold away and break down right on top. And I may end up sprinkling some sand or some peat moss or some cocoa core or something like that on top of this to kind of cover things up and just keep kind of adding garden here. The carrots are starting to pop up and get their mature tops on them a little bit here. All these onions are doing real well. Probably need to thin those out a little bit. Potatoes, man, look at these things. They're growing great. They're nice and thick and healthy. So those will probably grow up probably be 4 feet tall in here. I'll probably have to cut those back. Bush beans are doing real well, just getting ready to put on their first few flowers here pretty soon. And that's pretty much all I have in here besides this kale. Now this is some very, very healthy kale. You can tell by the color. It doesn't look like we have any nutrient deficiencies or anything going on here. It's very, very firm, and it's growing very quickly. So the lights that I have in here are my homemade DIY LED strip light growing on this side that has the grow light strips and the regular strips on it. And then on this side I have just all white or all 60, I think it's 6,000 Kelvin strips on this side. And then I have our Unit Farm LED grow light here on the top. This is all the runoff from the worm farm here. So as I water, all that water just soaks through and seeps through all the soil and the layers that I put into this. If you check the video out where I made this originally, it has layers of straw and different types of soil and compost that were put in. All that water drains through that, and as the worms break down all of our compost, our potato peels and banana peels and apple leftovers and coffee grounds and tea bags and all that stuff, dead leaves and roots from the plants and things that are growing in there, the worms break all that down. They turn it into a soluble material and make this even more available for the plants. You could use this in a pump sprayer, in a foliar spray. You could put this in one of those hose attachments that you know mounts underneath your hose deal, like the Miracle-Gro ones or whatever there, and you spray it as you water your garden, and it'll suck this up and kind of distribute it out throughout your garden. So this is a super packed nutrient. So instead of taking our worm castings out of the worm farm and putting those worm castings out into the garden, we can just take this liquid runoff instead. I don't have to sort through worm castings. I don't have to mess with any of that stuff. This is where all those nutrients are at. So let's take this here and get this up into our indoor orange tree, and I'll show you how well that's been growing. After we mix that with a little bit of water, go ahead and get that applied to the orange tree. So this is our indoor-outdoor bin tea, or that worm bin compost runoff, whatever you want to call it, that super fertilizer we pulled out there. And I've been watering it with that, and you can see, I'll bring in close here, this thing produce a full mature fruit for us. All right, let's see if we can find an extra little spot here and see if we can dig up a couple worms pulled out. You can see a bunch of, there's a couple small ones. Oh, they're everywhere. Look at that. Look at how many are in there. Oh, these big ones. Now I think some earth, that doesn't look like a red wiggler. I think some earthworms got in here when we put our native soil in. So that's all right. They all have their purpose. But you can just tell how healthy that soil is with all these worms in here. I mean, that's just one scoop full, and I can see another 4, 5, 6 on the ground or on the dirt, just in the area where I dug up. That is some healthy soil. Look at all those worms in there. Wow. Got a couple popcorn seeds. I was just throwing anything in here that'll break down. I just kept throwing stuff in here. What a great little garden this year. Now, a lot of people have asked, you know, why aren't you doing aquaponics? Why aren't you doing hydroponics and all that stuff? I wanted to try something different. You know, I did the aquaponics for years. If you want to check out all the series I did on aquaponics and what it's all about, I had a huge system at our old house set up in the basement. Indoor growing was great. Had a lot of fun with it. We produced a lot of food, but this system here is a completely natural and sustainable system, just like aquaponics is a sustainable type system. This is the same way. We're inputting, instead of having to buy fish food and put it into the system or make my own fish food, I'm able to put our own scraps, our own food scraps, organic material, whatever, into this system, let the worms break it down, and we can grow right in this system. Plus, the byproduct of this is that fertilizer that I can use in other areas of our home. So this is a very sustainable type system, something that I would love to mimic on a larger scale in a greenhouse or something like that. So instead of having hydroponics nutrients and all these other things, I can produce our own nutrients right here in the soil in a natural way. So that's the reason that I've kind of gone this route. And man, these worms are just they work. I mean, having that many worms in that small of an area, just to be able to see how well all those babies are doing in there, and all the the completely sustainable little worm farm here, growing some food for us. I'm able to harvest kale whenever I want. Soon we'll have some beans, and we'll be able to come down here and clip some onions, pull a carrot, pull a radish, and eventually you may have some potatoes. I'm not sure if I may have timed things wrong. I probably should have planted those potatoes a little later. They're growing way faster than I thought, and so I think they're gonna probably shade out everything else around them. But we'll let it grow, and we'll see what happens. If all we end up with is a bunch of big potato plants, then and you'll be able to link over to those videos as well. I'd love to hear from you guys. Questions, comments, what do you guys think? A little sustainable worm farm. It's going pretty good so far, so I'm happy with it. But love to hear your thoughts and comments. So throw that stuff down below for me. As always, guys, thumbs up on the video. I always need those thumbs up. It makes a big difference on the ranking of the video and how it's shared and how other people, the information gets out to others. So if you found it informational at all, or at least fun to watch, love to get a thumbs up from you guys. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. Have a good one.